County here. So if we can maybe start at the end there with Ms. Lynn. Ms. Lynn, do you want to introduce yourself?
She doesn't have a picture.
Oh, you don't have mic? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we've got Ms. Lynn there. We've also got Jason May. Clayton, do you have a microphone there?
I do, sir.
Okay.
Clayton Boyner, Assistant County Manager.
Patrick Nyland, Deputy County Manager.
Brian Matthews, County Manager.
I'm Jason Kay, I'm the county attorney, and just for the benefit of the room, I wanted to say I'm not listening to a podcast. These are serving kind of a hearing aid function for me so I can pick up different voices. I didn't want anybody to see these gaudy things in my ears and think I was just over here rocking out.
Mr. Kay.
Clancy Balcom, County Commissioner.
Melissa Merrill, County Commissioner.
Errol Wedra, County Commissioner.
Christina Helms, Commissioner.
And I am Brian Helms, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you.
We will likewise start with Ms. McLam.
Shawna McLam, Chief Finance Officer for Union County Schools.
I'm Colin Moore. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Administration Operations for Union County Public Schools.
Drew Houlihan, Superintendent.
Todd Price, School Board at Large.
Kathy Heintel, District 6.
Joe Moriel, District 5.
Sandra Green, School Board, District 4.
Barry Tucker, District 3.
John Kirkpatrick, District 1.
Matt Helms, School Board, District 2.
And I am Reverend Jimmy H. Benson, Sr., at large and Chairman of the Union County Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first item of business for tonight is the Union County financial update. Before we do, I would like to first welcome our Board of Education, our guests here at the Ag Center. We're certainly appreciative of your presence here. We appreciate the ability to meet with you all in person to discuss the things that are challenging for our county and obviously our school system. And so I first want to extend my thanks to all of you for making the trip out here and being willing to meet jointly.
We wholeheartedly receive your greetings, and we are equally glad to be here today to meet with our great Board of County Commissioners and your staff, County Manager, and all his team. And we truly appreciate the opportunity to come and create some good dialogue as we move forward in this process. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your hospitality.
Thank you, sir. All right, so at this time, I will now recognize our County Manager, Brian Matthews, for the Union County financial update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Benson and members of the school board, thank you very much for attending tonight. I intend on going over a high level of our budget that is proposed for the commissioners. The process I had a public hearing on June 1st for that, and then hopefully the board will make a decision about the adoption of that budget on June the 16th. So, just to kind of go over the highlights of what we have for this year's budget, what you'll see in the top number, that is the total for all funds for Union County. When I say that, I mean that is our enterprise funds, that is general fund, that is debt, that's everything. Now, the one number that is really, I guess, really pertinent to what we're talking about is really the one that says general fund subtotal, and that's the $470 million number there. That is the one that really makes up the general fund, which is also the portion that the schools and the education comes out of. You'll notice that the general fund, which is our county budget, is at $230 million. Our general fund debt's a little over $7 million, and our economic development's about almost $3 million. Education, and education makes up multiple components. It is Union County Public Schools, charter schools which are within your budget, and then also South Piedmont Community College. That's what we call education, and that's how we fund that when we discuss our tax rate. And we also have the debt fund. Your portion, the education portion of our actual budget, runs about 49% of the total budget. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what is the difference between what is our budget and what is our tax rate. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but the education portion of our budget makes up about 49% of all those expenses. Just to talk about revenues that we receive, the vast majority of our revenues are ad valorem. They are property taxes and fees that we receive. That's about $280+ million. We receive local option sales tax to the tune of around $81 million. And then we also have other revenues, and that's how we make up that $470 million. The Union County government portion is funded by a mix of sales tax, fees, as well as property taxes. That is the same for the education portion. It is predominantly property taxes with some sales tax that make up those functions. There was a lengthy discussion at our meeting on June the 1st about how this breakup works and what our tax rate is. And our chairman asked a question specifically about why we have what's called a bifurcated tax rate. For the purpose of being transparent to the public, Union County Board of Commissioners requested that we show the public a tax rate that is for general fund and a tax rate that is for education. As I indicated before, education makes up multiple components. It's not just UCPS. And when we send out our tax bills, residents will see on their tax bill what that general fund amount is. They'll see what the education amount is, and they'll also see if they're in a fire department, what that fire department rate is as well. So it'll show various different tax rates. Currently, what you'll see is the proposed tax rate for the general fund is 11.24%, and then our debt is a little over a penny. Education, as I said before, is 26.78 pennies on the 100. UCPS and charter school, your piece of that is 26.01. So you do make up the lion's share of that tax rate. South Piedmont has a much smaller amount. That's because we fund them at a much smaller amount. And then your education debt, which is all of the voter-approved bonds and any debt that have to do with the construction of schools and facilities for UCPS, is 3.89 cents. And I'm sorry, that's education as a whole. And you can see the breakdown for UCPS is a little over 3 pennies. South Piedmont's about 0.87 cents. This makes up our total tax rate for Union County at 43.42 cents. Now, the question was posed, like, how much of the tax rate does education make up of our total tax rate? It makes up 71% of our tax rate. As I said before, it makes up 49% of our budget, because our budget is also made up of other revenue sources. But 71% of our tax rate goes towards education. Now, we did break this up because the board asked to be able to see how does UCPS play within that. UCPS is really 60%. It's 55 when you take out what the estimated amount for charter schools is. Charter schools are roughly $16 million. If you take that out, then that brings the UCPS amount to roughly 55%, charter schools at around 5%, and then the education debt, South Piedmont, and operating costs make up the balance of the rest of those tax rates. And you can see that general operations makes up roughly 26% by itself.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Stop you right there. Just to make sure that everybody's clear, and those watching at home or in the audience. So if you can go back to the pie chart slide. You know, we discussed this on Monday at our regular meeting, but I think it's worth saying that, you know, if we take if we take all of our education, and this is not singling out UCPS, this includes all of our educational partners.
Yes.
But if you take all of the education there, essentially what we're looking at is if you take those figures away from the 43.42, if I've done my math right, we're running general county operations on 12.75 cents. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Out of the 43.42.
That is correct.
And I think it's important. I think the slide is so very important because we get so many people, to your point earlier, that they want to know, well, how are the taxes being split up? And where are the taxes going? And so we get the public that wants to know this. We've even had, some board members that have questioned this. And so I think that it's very telling, that the county as a whole has had a commitment to education and supporting our educational partners.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that was a large discussion that we had on Monday, that, a vast majority of the tax rate does go towards education. And a large amount of our budget as a whole also goes towards education.
Now, what's not captured here, if I can just interject, is out of that 12.75 cents on the tax rate, the majority of that would go towards funding things like not UCPS, but the sheriff's office. So the sheriff's office and DHHS would be the two major departments that would be funded.
Yes, sir. So you're exactly right. Sheriff's Office and Department of Health and Social Services are the two largest departments and the largest funded within the county. We have an enterprise function, but that doesn't come out of general fund. That's a large department, but that's not reflected in general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And I failed to say, if anyone has questions while I'm talking, please stop me. It's easier to do it that way, so please don't hesitate if you have questions along the way.
Mr. Manager,
Yes, sir.
that pie chart, that could be any county in the state as far as, that could be any county in the state as far as percentages somewhere in that neighborhood of their budget when it comes to education. Just about any county in the state would have a large percentage of that pie for education, correct?
Yes, sir. I don't know the percentages statewide, but I would venture to say you're correct, that there are a lot of counties who spend a lot of money on education. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, appreciate that.
Yes, sir. So some of the details for our UCPS investments for education that I have recommended to the board for them to consider. So when you saw that tax rate of 26.01 cents, that is the tax rate that is for UCPS out of education, that would yield, in our calculations, that would yield a little over $11.2 million for next fiscal year, $11.283 million. That's how much that would yield. We also intend on using some of the education fund balance, and I'll show you how the breakdown is for that in just a moment. So statutorily in North Carolina, there is a calculation that counties have to do with how much we must fund public schools above what was funded in the previous fiscal year. It almost always goes up. It's rare that that number ever goes down because it's a factor of, even though your enrollment may be going down, but it's inflation, and it's also how much we gave you last year. So last year is a floor, and then you take that calculation. I have never seen the opportunity for that to go down, but for Union County, that number has always been rising. For this particular year, our mandatory amount that we must pay above last year's is $5.6 million. And you'll see that number right there, increase over operating expense. That's the statutory amount that we must give you above last fiscal year's amount. We've also shown that we intend on funding out of the tax rate $2.7 million towards your school resource officers. I'll show a little bit later how the county is also funding out of our own general fund some additional funds for that, but that would come out of the tax rate for education. And also the other item that I am recommending in this budget is to set aside a little over $3.8 million for supplements for teacher aides and/or stipends for teachers. So teachers and teachers aid, a total of $3.8 million to be calculated how that is distributed at really some later time. Drew and I, Dr. Hula and I discussed how that might work. I cannot promise you that it would be $1,000 for every teacher and $750 for every teacher's aide. Those are things that we just talked about as a general to try and get a number in place. Ultimately, what that number is going to depend on the discussions that we may have with the school board if the school board wishes to engage in this discussion. I have recommended to the county commissioners that that money be set aside and it be based on an interlocal agreement between the Board of Commissioners and Union County Public Schools so that those funds go to the appropriate positions that our board would like to focus on, and that is teachers and teachers' aides. That again is through $3.8 million. You can see the total
Mr.
adds
Manager.
up. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Why would that be necessary when it is the county's job to fund us? Why would there need to be an agreement? What is the basis of such an agreement?
Sure.
And where did it come from and why? Why was that deemed to be part of this process?
Certainly. This really comes from the confusion that we had last year with the funding that I think our board anticipated would go towards teachers, and that we wanted to make sure, and the board wanted to make sure, that there was no misunderstanding where those funds would be allocated and who they would be allocated to. That is the driving force behind that. Okay. As you can see, $12.2 million is what our recommended amount is for education, above last year's actual allocation for schools, $12.2 million. That is more than what the tax rate would yield for that. We are again going to recommend using some of our education fund balance to help make up that difference. But I do want to point out that we intend on recommending that we use more than what was originally calculated for that education purpose. Yes, sir.
As we move forward, it's important to understand to have a proper foundation. And the situation, the unfortunate situation from last year was driven by misinformation. And that misinformation stemmed into a firestorm of mega proportion because it centered around that the Board of Education and the school district did not properly utilize that funding, when in fact we always went to you all. The verbiage of teachers, and I think this bears pertinency, because we always produce a budget for certified staff. Routinely throughout time immemorial, it may have been talked about teachers that may have been used to convey that, but it's certified staff. And we based allocating those funds upon the approval of the state budget. I had the team do some research, Mr. Manager, Mr. Chairman, and over the course from 2014, we just took a year, because that year also includes when some of the Board of County Commissioner members present was on the school board. So I wanted to encapsulate that for historical purposes. And so as we look at 2014 to 2015, you all provided a $561 increase. This is just a sampling. And in August, We were able to pay that in August because the state had a budget approved and signed by the governor on August 7th. And if you go down this list, our allocation of those funds always centered around the fact that the state either had a approved budget or we waited until that budget was approved so that we'll be able to properly calculate what we will be able to give to the certified staff. And so we all know that the budget last year, what budget kind of thing, right? And so that's what we were looking on from our historical movement that we did. We were not holding that money or giving that money to other entities that were not certified staff. So I just want to say that if this agreement, sir, you're mentioning was produced as a way to say that we're not going to release these funds until we know when they're going to be released, one, that's improper, and two, it goes against our historical dispensing of those funds, which is what we said when the firestorm happened, that we were waiting. We wasn't using that as a crux. That's just been how our team has maintained their procedural process so that once the state budget was approved, we'll know exactly what we're working with.
Certainly.
Right,
Yes,
if I
sir.
can make a comment. So I believe that we've got an agenda item coming up where we can discuss the interlocal agreement and potential terms in full. But what I will say is that, our board, and you hit this a little bit earlier, our board feels as though in a year where we've got very limited funds and potentially unfunded mandates from the state, that we have to set some priorities. We have to set some priorities on, what we can do, and we have to identify what our top priorities are. So our board feels comfortable with this interlocal agreement proposed by our county manager, because we feel as though this allows both sides to potentially make some changes for the good, to allow us to not have any kind of communication errors, any kind of problems with that, assuming that we can agree to the terms. Thank you.
Certainly.
Before we go off this page,
Yes, sir.
I do have a question on the SROs. So I believe that is a new line item, correct?
It
So
is
how were SROs previously funded, like in this?
SROs have been historically funded out of the general fund tax rate by Union County.
So this being a new budget, I mean, it looks great, the 12.2 million, but in essence, it's under 10 on this line because that is a new line item for us to fund, where previously it was in the general fund, correct?
Sure, and I want to point out that, and you're absolutely correct about that. Part of the reason that the board asked for us to create a bifurcated tax rate is for us to be more transparent with the public about the cost of education. SROs are a cost of education. They don't benefit general government. They are for UCPS. And so in reality, what we are doing is being more transparent with the public about what education costs are. That should have been all along underneath the tax rate for education. It just wasn't. So what we are doing is moving those over time. We can't accommodate that in 1 year. There's just no way. The amount that we pay for that out of the general fund is significantly higher than $2.7 million. So the goal is to be reflective of what those true costs are for education, so the public has a transparent view of that.
But arguably, it's public safety for 39,000 students and additional staff, correct?
I think you could split hairs with it, but we would argue that we wouldn't have SROs if it wasn't for Union County Public Schools.
Okay, but this is a new way to represent it in the budget.
Certainly, yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
County Manager, is the 2.7, almost $2.8 million for all SROs? And if not, what is the 2.77 million? Is it 20%, 10%,
Sure.
one new SRO? And I would also like to know, what is the full cost of having SROs at all 53 schools?
Sure.
If it's not 2.77.
Absolutely, and I can flip to that slide. We actually have that as a slide. So here is just to show you what the total cost is for school resources officers. So $6,224,000 is the actual total cost of SROs that the county has been funding in the general fund tax rate. 3.7 million, almost 3.8 million, goes towards the Behavioral Health Collaborative, also being funded out of the Union County General Fund tax rate, and then $50,000 for school health nurses. All that adds up to a little over $10 million that's been coming out of the general fund tax rate. To your point, Ms. Merrill, is that this total would now be reduced to about $7.3 million coming out of the county's general fund tax rate, and $2.7 million being shifted over to the education tax rate. I don't know what that percentage is, didn't calculate that, but that's taken $2.7 million, excuse me, out of $10 million. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Manager, if I could make a comment here regarding the SROs. So, following the Finance Committee meeting last week, there's been a lot of discussion about SROs and SRO funding, and it's been in a variety of different formats that I've seen comments about it. And I just want to be clear that the SRO funding is not necessarily going away. I mean, we're not cutting SROs.
No.
The proposed budget from the manager does not cut positions, and it does not diminish the safety for our children and our staff members. Commissioner Merrill and I, since we've been on the board, this has been a priority. It's been a priority for our entire board, but Commissioner Merrill and I came in at the same time, and this is something that we've discussed heavily over the years, is trying to get to a 1-to-1 ratio, so one SRO per school, and it's something that our board has been committed to. And so what you're seeing here is not the cutting of funding. We are simply asking and requesting that UCPS pay a portion of that expense out of discretionary funds for this year, with the purpose, to your point, of transitioning that expense so that it appears from the UCPS discretionary budget. And that is for transparency purposes, because we are asked all the time, where are these tax dollars going? Where are these funds going?
Sure.
And so if it remains in the Union County budget, then that skews those numbers for future budgets. And so we build, you guys probably do the same thing, but we build budgets off of the previous year's expenditures, and we calculate and we project. And so this would help, in my opinion, both boards for future projections.
And to Chairman Helms' point, we're actually adding another SRO this year in the budget, requesting adding another SRO in this year's budget, and that should be the last one to finalize having one in every single school. So hopefully that we'll get that adopted. That'll be in that budget. So that number there reflects that new position being added to it. That 6.2 million is reflective of our request to add one more SRO to the budget. To his point, we're not cutting, we're only adding to that cost.
So Chairman Helms, the 27% of this general fund, or of the 10 million, is moving into our operating funds for this year. Is that the expected amount or percentage moving forward? We can count on 27% year over year, or what should we expect from there on?
That's an excellent question. I think over time, what we would like to have is that all the costs associated with education be reflected in that tax rate. That is not going to happen overnight. It may remain at that 27% for quite some time. Because obviously the growth in the rate is dependent on whether the board increases the tax rate or our growth in our value. Fortunately enough, we've been able to grow in value, but not necessarily have to grow in tax rate. Now, we did have a reval recently, and that obviously boosted our valuations in the county, but we've been fortunate that we've been able to just grow value without having to grow the tax rate. So this may take some time to make that complete shift.
I appreciate the transparency and at least putting it on in a line item there. But it is, like, from an optics perspective, it does look like you're giving us this funding, but a portion of it you're just reappropriating.
Certainly.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Except that it's at a much lower, you're getting a much smaller piece of the cost than what we're paying.
27%, right?
Correct.
Yep.
And I wanted to go back to your first question too. When we refer to education, we've already established, we're talking about SPCC, charter schools, and UCPS. And to go back to your first question, the SROs that we're funding only go to UCPS because we're not providing SROs to all of our charter schools. So when you're talking about local dollars and we are funding charter schools, that's important to recognize is that SROs are only provided for UCPS and the county's not providing them anywhere else.
You mentioned the bifurcated budget model. If you could maybe expand a little bit on that, because the bifurcated budget model was something that was not in place until I believe it was 2023 when we adopted that budget, because that was something that was supported heavily by Commissioner Merrill, myself, and then Commissioner Rushing at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was something that was supported by our Board of Education members as well. And obviously that does give us greater transparency, because what happens is we break out the expenses obviously in the tax bill, but it also provides benefits from budgeting, correct?
It does, yes, sir.
So if you maybe could just take a minute and explain some of that, I think it'd
Certainly.
be helpful.
So some of the challenges we faced in years past were, the confusion and the optics of one tax rate and how the school portion benefited from that one tax rate. And this was before this board was here, and I think before many of you were here, but there were issues and complaints that the county was hiding dollars within the tax rate and that the schools were not getting its fair share based on what the tax rate yielded as far as total revenue. And so our board wanted to be able to be clear, this is how much we are actually generating for education purposes. And the way to do that is to have a defined tax rate that shows this is how much we collect. Now, what we've recognized is that there are expenses, as I've said, that aren't really reflected in that rate to date. But the goal ultimately is to be able to say, we have a rate. That rate generates a certain amount of revenue for education. It's not just for UCPS, it's all education. And then that is clear to the public how much we actually spend on education. There's no argument as to how much that yields and what we will do with those funds. So I think one of the things that we heard concerns are, and I understand the concern on that side, is that we wouldn't use those funds for just education. We'd use them for some other purpose. We would take those funds and use them to buy a new sheriff vehicle or pay for Parks and Rec, and that is not the case. We are using these funds for education purposes. To your point, though, that is a new line item that is different than what it was, but it is still what we consider an education purpose. And that was the reason why this board asked for a bifurcated tax rate.
And there is obviously some benefit there with sales tax revenue and some other things as well. But the philosophy behind that was, well, we win together or we lose together. And that's why we went down that road. But I think it's important that we all understand the benefits of that bifurcated budget, because it's used to shape a lot of what we're seeing right now.
Yes, sir.
Question also, the education fund balance, that includes SBCC, UCPS, and charter schools?
That is all education fund balance, yes, sir. Now, the lion's share of that is UCPS, because you make up the biggest portion of that.
I have one clarifying question on that. So is there an education fund balance in your budget? And this is a reappropriated portion of that you're putting in to get to the 12,246?
No, sir. So what this is these are funds that are collected and above and beyond what we're anticipated to be collected.
Oh, okay.
And so we just call it the fund balance. It's not a specific fund balance called out.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the past, and I don't know what the correct word, I know Gary Sides always called it true-up, and that was, I thought, funds that we were collected over, like what you'd budgeted to give us.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see anything, but it was like a 360-page budget
Sure.
book to go through. On that, is there a true-up that we'll be receiving?
So there are some funds that were obviously collected. That's part of where that 900,000 comes from. That was $5.2 million. Those funds are being used to pay down the education or UCPS debt. So we're using those funds to help pay down the debt that is voter-approved debt for UCPS. There's also another strategy for that. I understand that part of this meeting tonight is a capital discussion. Obviously, this board had asked for a bond referendum that did not get on this year. I think that part of our goal is to have a unified vision of where we go with capital so that both our board and the school board are on the same page with that. In order to do that, that generally takes tax rate increases, but if we're able to pay down debt over time, we might be able to reduce or eliminate a tax rate impact. I cannot promise that. I can only say that's a strategy. So those funds are being used to help pay down some of the school debt that we actually have. Yes, sir.
When you say pay down debt, that's in terms of like a mortgage, that's paying an additional towards the principal. You're
Yes,
paying
sir.
towards principal.
Playing towards the principal, so we reduce our interest on that. Yes, sir. And one of our next presentation is about debt, so you'll see a little bit more information on that. So you'll get a little bit more detail on the school debt. You'll have that.
Have those funds always been allocated to capital, or were they expended?
They have been allocated back to the schools for mostly capital. Now, not necessarily buy down debt, whatever you use them for in the past.
But it was capital, not operating.
It's my understanding it was capital. Now, Dr. Houlihan might correct me on that, but I believe it was mostly capital.
No, you are correct. Historically, we've received those true-up funds for one-time capital expenses.
All right. We are at the portion of the debt summary, so I'm going to turn this over to Clayton Voynier, our Assistant County Manager, for him to go over that with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening again, Commissioners and Board of Education members.
It's on. You're going to need to speak up.
Okay. I'm going to provide just a brief overview of our debt summary for UCPS. That's the debt that we hold in the county. This information was prepared recently by our financial advisor, and Beverly Lyles, our Chief Financial Officer, normally would present this information, but she was not able to be here, so I'm going to do my best impression of her. We look a little different. The first thing I want to draw your attention to on this slide is on the right-hand side is our total school tax supported debt service. At the top of that is the total principal, that's $313.2 million, and about $100 million in interest, and bringing the total to about $412.4 million. That is the projected interest on the bonds when we project out principal and interest payments over the next 20 years. So we recently issued debt, and so that's a 20-year bond that we put out.
And so that's why you see the year of 2046 being paid out. Moving over to the left side, the graph, this is just a graphical representation of the debt service payments. One thing I wanted to point out here was that in 2031, you see a significant drop-off in those debt service payments. And that's because this is just existing debt, and we're not making, the tax rate stays the same. Right now, there's no future debt being issued, and this is when current outstanding debt is being paid off. So it's about half annually of what we would be paying now. In about 5 years, our debt service payment would go down by about half. In the bottom left-hand corner is the total outstanding debt again. It gives a little bit of information on the bond series, what's the outstanding for each of those bonds, the call date, as well as the interest rates on those. Anything that says current under call date is currently payable. We can pay down that debt early. We can make additional payments to that. And again, I think that's what the manager mentioned, is that using some of that education fund balance, we would be paying down some of the current debt that is currently outstanding. On the next slide, this is our debt model for UCPS. This is what we use to determine future tax rate impact of any future debt issued. We use this also, again, to determine future debt service payments. And this is just a planning estimate. I just want to make that clear, and I'll go through a couple points here in just a minute to demonstrate that, but this is a planning estimate. In April, we presented this as well based on UCPS's long-term capital plan. Of course, that is likely going to change because that was not approved to go on this upcoming bond referendum. And so when we would get an updated capital plan, we would plug that into this model to show what our future tax rate impact would be as a result. Just to get you oriented a little bit, I know it's kind of an eye chart here, but on the left is our capital funding requirements. You can see those school debt service payments. That's what we showed on the slide before. We've got some service charges. That's essentially broker fees and other admin charges to service the debt. And then we have our total capital requirements. When we move into the revenue that's available, we have a dedicated tax rate. The manager showed 3.02 cents. That is the current tax rate for this, but that can fluctuate and will likely change over time as we do countywide reappraisals, presuming that our board would adopt a revenue neutral tax rate. We also use in that column an estimate for growth. It's about 3.75%. We're actually projecting about 4.25% for this upcoming budget year. And also we used a planning value of last year's penny value, which is about 6.1 million. So that also fluctuates based on collections that we get every month from property taxes as well as motor vehicle taxes. And so on Monday, we presented an updated value for the next fiscal year, which is about 6.5 million for that penny value. Then we have lottery proceeds. We also have sales tax revenues. We use a projection of about 2.5% growth. We're actually anticipating about 4% for the next fiscal year. And then we have the total revenues that are available. And in the far right, you have your cash flow surplus. So that's any annual surplus that gets added to that education debt fund balance. And as the, if the tax rate stays the same, that available fund balance grows and no future debt would be issued. That could then be used to pay down existing debt. And as the manager mentioned, this has sort of historically been our board's philosophy that we've done in the past. We've used ARPA funds previously. We've used education bond premiums to pay down the debt, and that offsets or mitigates future tax rate impact from future debt issued, and that's true for this year as well. The manager mentioned this as well, but we do currently have some education debt fund balance available, and we are working with our financial advisor on bond payoff scenarios, and we'll be bringing back that to our board sometime in the summer. So that's a brief summary. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all we have for the debt.
I have just a comment. Clayton, thank you very much for this presentation. It's extremely helpful. Unfortunately, note number 4 is so small we can barely read it. But I know there has been questions from the Board of Education, where does the lottery funds go? What's happening to the lottery money? And note number 4 will show that in 2025, the county and the school board received $3 million that was used to pay down debt on school buildings. And so several times a year, the board chairs from each board get a document on how much lottery money is being sent to Union County. And we have Mr. Benchin's signature as well as my signature on all of the money that came in for 2025 that was used to pay down school debt. So if anyone needs a copy of that, just let us know. But just want to make sure everyone was clear on where the $3 million in lottery money goes, and it's to pay down UCPS debt on existing bonds and schools that have been mortgaged.
To further clarify or further make a point, thank you very much,
Commissioner Merrill, if you'll notice, there actually is, under the revenue available, $3 million for lottery funds reflected in this debt model over time. Now, obviously, we update this if those numbers change and we get additional funds or if they go down. But we use that as part of our planning process to be able to evaluate what the tax rate impact will be over time. And that's why it's important for both of these boards to get together and have a unified plan for what your capital needs will be so that we can plug this into our debt model and have a better idea of what future tax rate impacts will be. It's not perfect because every year data changes, but it gives us a glimpse into what we're facing and what we have to do over time. Thank you.
What's the bond rating for when these bonds were issued for the county?
We are AAA bond rated.
Always AAA?
Yeah, yes, sir. And honestly, our staff has worked very hard to keep that AAA rating. Yes, sir. I believe that is our portion of the Union County financial update, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Benchin, I'll turn it over to you because I think the next segment is yours.
Yes, we're going to have Dr. Houlihan, and he'll take it from here. And he'll introduce Ms. McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While Sean is getting set up, as was alluded to earlier in the meeting, we are pleased tonight to give you an update on the current state budget outlook as agreed upon on the recent announcement by the General Assembly in terms of their agreed upon framework. As you all know, the state budget, or lack thereof, really helps to give us guidance on how we then implement our local budget in the following year. And so we're going to begin this presentation with an update on where things stand at the state level and the potential impact, if this current framework is agreed upon, that we'll have on our local end for the fall. I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Shauna McLam. She is our current Chief Financial Officer. And again, as Mr. Matthews said during this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop her. But again, this is all currently what's being proposed. Nothing that you're going to see has been voted on or approved.
Can you hear me? Okay. I was like, which song? Okay. So as Dr. Houlihan mentioned, we do have a state budget update for you all tonight. Just wanted to recap some of the framework that has currently been announced from our General Assembly. They have made some and agreed upon some decisions around compensation and benefit increases. They've made some proposed increases that we hope to have voted on sometime mid-June for implementation in July. It makes it much easier for us as we plan for what we need to, what funding we need to have and how we plan and prepare for our first payrolls when we have this information ahead of time. So as you can see here, they have agreed upon an average of 8% for our certified staff salary schedules, as well as a 3% increase to the base salary for our non-certified staff. Just to give you some idea of what categories of employees we're talking about here, teachers and certified staff are going to be just what you think: teachers, nurses, certified instructional coaches, psychologists, and others. Non-certified staff are going to be your teacher assistants, your facility staff, bus drivers, and other categories such as that. So as we move forward, it's great that they've made this decision. It makes it much easier for me and my team to not have retroactive pay. All of this should be effective for July 1 of 2026. It does not impact our current school year at this point. So health insurance costs have increased. We have an employer portion for all full-time employees. This coming school year will be $8,925 that we pay out for every full-time employee to have the state health plan. There's also an employer matching retirement cost for every full-time employee that is increasing in this coming year by 4.5%, increasing to 25.76% for every full-time employee. So overall, each full-time employee, every salary dollar that is increased for them and every salary dollar we pay out for them has 30 to 40% added to it to match those employer benefits and provide that for our staff. One of the other things that the General Assembly framework outlined were some one-time bonus payments. And those one-time bonus payments were outlined based on categories as well as years of experience. They outlined the teachers and certified staff. Those with more than 16 years of experience would be eligible for a $1,000 increase. Those with less than 16 years of experience would be eligible for $500. We're still awaiting some of the details. Once all of the paperwork is done and the bill is completed, we should have the full eligibility information so we can make more accurate projections. On the non-certified side, they did salary bands for them. Anyone making less than $65,000 a year will receive $1,750 or be eligible for $1,750, and those earning over $65,000 a year will be eligible for $1,000. So again, we're waiting for that eligibility detail so that we can see exactly how much funding we will need. When the state implements and approves these type of increases and bonuses, they fund those for state paid employees. We have other employees paid from federal funds and other funding sources, such as local funds, that we also need to account for when making our projections to ensure that all employee categories receive the same increases. So, sorry. Got ahead of myself. So as this slide details, any of those individuals that are paid from other funding sources, we need to make sure we've accounted for, and we've run some preliminary projections based on what we know and have tried to determine approximately what we would need to be able to fund all of those employees for that one-time bonus. The way it was outlined, the reason we're a little unsure about some of the eligibility criteria is because the framework kind of indicated this one-time payment would be really to compensate staff for the current school year that we're in, for 25-26, because I'm not sure how many realize that in this current school year, most of our staff received no increases. Our certified staff did get a step increase, as well as the local supplement that we were able to provide, but all non-certified staff and other employees did not receive an increase in this current school year. So we're currently projecting the local impact of that one-time bonus to be a little over $2.8 million to be able to fund those staff members as I outlined on the previous slide. Once we have the finalized information and we know exactly how much state funding we'll receive and other criteria for eligibility, we'll be able to really hone in that number. But generally, this is our projected cost at this point. Oh, wait, sorry. There are a few ways, really about 3 ways that we could go about looking at trying to fund this additional unknown that we did not know about as we prepared our budget that we submitted to you all on May 15th. So right now, one way for us to be able to seek these funds from the county commissioners, this was what we would consider an unfunded mandate. We were not prepared for in our local budget. The other way for us to potentially fund this would be through our fund balance. Our auditor comes annually and talks a lot about how we're on a razor thin margin with the current fund balance that we have. And then the third option would be for us to come to, maybe some mutual agreement that between a blended type funding where there's maybe some of our fund balance and some from the county to support the need for this. So as I mentioned, once we have more definite numbers, hopefully mid-June, it'll be passed sometime, I would say in July, maybe end of July, we should have a lot of that information along with the expectation and timeline of when these funds need to be paid. That's really all I have on the state budget update. I don't know if anyone has any questions before I move on to the local update.
Ms. McLam, so looking at this slide, let's call a spade a spade. This is an unfunded mandate. Please don't misunderstand. I think it's great that the state is looking at incentives and increases for our teachers. But we are facing a deficit. So my question is, do we have a figure for how much the state is allotting? And do we have a comparison number to what we're seeing here for the deficit?
Right. I'm hoping that once we do get all that, once everything's passed, so there's a timeline. So once the General Assembly passes the budget, then DPI and the state budget office will start working on what those calculations and numbers for the allocation will be. Then probably, my understanding is they're going to want to move very quickly on this because they want to get the funds out to the individuals because, again, they didn't have an increase this year, so they're going to be wanting us to get that very quickly once we have some of those definite numbers, because the state is going to provide a dollar allotment for us to do this with, and we will stretch that dollar allotment as far as we can based on the criteria they give us, and that's when we'll be able to determine exactly how much local impact we'll have. We're probably about a month out or more before I'll have all that definite information.
Thank you. And I've got one follow-up question. So, obviously we've got options to look at. What's the current fund balance amount for UCPS?
As of June 30 of 2025, our current fund balance was $7.8 million.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sean?
I was going to say,
Merrill.
I'm going to switch presentations. Oh.
I just want to verify that I'm tracking with the bonus payment that is in red. That is only that is what you're estimating you need for only the local positions or the UCPS positions that are locally funded through.
No, ma'am.
Okay, because it says projected local funding.
Correct. The only funding we have to supplement is with local dollars. We have federally paid people. Those federal funds are not going to be increased by DPI or provided at the state level to fund those employees who are paid from federal funds, well as local
That
dollars.
wasn't the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The question was, is the 2.8 million your estimate to give the locally paid positions the same bonuses that's going to be given from the state?
The state position.
The state positions. Is this what you're estimating you will need from local dollars to pay for the positions that are not funded from the state?
Yes, and it includes locally paid and federally paid employees that are not state funded as well as other funds. So all employees that are not state funded. So when you say locally funded, not every employee that's going to be in this 2.8 is all locally funded. There are some individuals that are paid from federal dollars.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so that's a
local
better.
funds will fund that.
It got a little
Yes.
muddy there. So
Yes.
I think what we have figured out here is these are local dollars that are needed to pay the local and federal positions that will not be getting the state increase.
Right, the state won't fund those, correct?
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Ms. McLam, follow-up question.
Yes.
How many federal employees do we, or federally funded employees do we have?
I don't know off the top of my head. We receive funds for Title I, Title II, Title III. We have EC funding that we receive. We have quite a bit of federal funds that we get that help fund multiple programs and supplement a lot of our local state dollars. So I would have to get you the specifics on that because it's going to vary from year to year based on the allocations we get of federal dollars.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
appreciate getting that information.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think another good question would be is how many total, how many full-time employees does UCPS currently have?
At full-time, I'm going to say it's probably over 5,000 right now, but I will get you those specific numbers.
Thank you very much.
Shauna, the fund balance that you referenced, the 7 million, can you speak to that and what has traditionally our auditor said about that balance every year?
So our auditor does indicate when he comes to present our financial statements that for a district our size, that the general fund balance that we maintain is what he considers a razor thin margin. That we have to manage our budgets at a very tight level to be able, anything unexpected, something like this that's what you would consider an unexpected expense could throw the district into, a very, very low operating, we have a very low operating budget. So with, in general, a budget our size, at least a 10% fund balance would be recommended. There's no general statute or rule about that, but that's what the general recommendation is. I know that the local government has something very similar. They maintain a certain percentage as well, just to make sure that you can operate in any type of emergency.
You would agree cutting our fund balance almost in half would not be the right direction?
No, that would be very concerning. Right now, our fund balance is, it provides us about 6 days of operating. If something were to drastically happen, we have about 6 days to operate with cash flow.
If you don't, we had a very long discussion about this, I believe, over a year ago, and we certainly understand that, a fund balance is important. I do want to point out that Union County actually carries a fund balance that actually is a portion of your fund balance, because we pay you every year, and because we have the debt on our books, we have a fund balance that is calculated based on what your impact is to our budget. So we carry a fund balance on our books that can be used for these types of circumstances. Now, I understand that you need to be able to be agile. You need to move when you need to move. You need funds available, and you can't necessarily always wait. But those funds, and when I say those funds, I mean there are $40+ million in the bank that cover that, and that's just a rough number, that make up our fund balance that the schools are able to request and have access to, as long as, of course, the board agrees to that. So I don't want you to feel like you're out there on an island by yourself. We do have that for that purpose.
Question two, with our fund balance is 7.8 million. That was what, May 30th was, or when was the date?
June 30th, 25, yes.
25, okay. So that won't include like school nutrition true up and after school true up?
No, that is just our general fund balance.
Commissioner Helms, I have a question. So, if the auditor has recommended that you should have 10% on hand for your general fund, and it sounds like we may be doubling efforts, what would, in the perfect world, what would 10% be for you to have that in your bank account?
$5 million, or $50 million. Yes. Right? Yes, 50. Yeah.
And if you're not sure,
right.
we can get the number later.
No, it'd be $50 million that we would need to maintain in our fund balance to have at a $500,000 annual budget, or $500 million annual budget. Sorry.
So between the county's percentage and your percentage, that would be more than 10%?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
A quick question. Mr. Manager, are you saying that of that fund balance that you speak of, that 40 million is earmarked for UCPS, or that's your total fund balance for the county?
Sure, and I'm please, that's not the exact number, and I'll get you the exact number. It is not earmarked specifically, but because the calculation is involved in what we generate and what we give to UCPS, that money can be used for UCPS.
Yeah, I just don't want the public to think that you're saying that UCPS has 40 million.
That's correct.
And sitting in the county.
You are absolutely correct. Yes, sir.
You know, we got folk here that they're writing down every single word that's said.
Right.
And they got ways of dissecting stuff better than Gordon Ramsay.
Oh, I yes, sir, absolutely. And the other challenge with having, a fund balance here at the county, which we're required through the local government commission to keep, which, as Shauna said, there is no statutory requirement for schools. We have a statutory requirement. The challenge when you have two fund balances, not saying you shouldn't, is remember, those are taxpayer dollars. So in essence, you're holding a lot of taxpayers' dollars. So we have to be careful and balance that so that we are not overtaxing our residents to have a nice big surplus that sits in a bank account. We're required to hold those funds. I think it's really balancing how much you have on your books so that you can be agile when you need to be agile.
That AAA bond rating you mentioned earlier, that is tied to a fund balance too. You have to have a certain, okay.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So, but every district in North Carolina, every county in North Carolina is required by statute to do the same thing. So I see what you're saying, but if our auditor is saying, like, I think he said we should have 2 to 3 months of operating, which I believe is like $20 million for us. I mean, every district is operating the same way, having their own fund balance, but then I guess the county also does.
We do. Yes, yes, ma'am.
So we ready to move on? I've got a local update as well. So, again, based on the information I just shared in our state update, we were able to refine some of the numbers that we originally proposed and submitted as part of our local budget. So within our local budget on an annual basis, we account for any locally paid employees that would be eligible for any state increases or bonuses or other full-time employee benefit increases. So we have taken our original budget request and I have made those updates based on the line items you see under salary and benefits, the proposed 3% increase, the average 8% increase for certified staff, and made those adjustments, as well as on the benefits. Now, something that still is has not been addressed to my knowledge is the state supplement that we have been eligible for the last several years, that we will no longer be eligible to receive those state funds in the coming school year, which is $3.4 million. I have not made any adjustment to the local supplement request of $2,000 for our certified personnel. And then I did make a slight adjustment for our certified personnel categories for our skilled trades and our teacher assistants that we had mentioned previously. That was in our original budget ask. It really hasn't had it didn't have any other impact on any of our other line items. Overall, it was about $100,000, $110,000 delta from our original request that is reflected on this slide. And then based on the county manager's proposal of the $5.6 million increase to operating, we have done, our board approved last night, the allocation as you see here. So the mandated increases that do include our redirects of a little over $5 million that we had included in our budget this year. That 3.3 in mandated increases included all of those salary increases that you saw. It also included the $3.4 million supplement funds that the state supplement funds that we anticipate we no longer are going to be eligible for next year. So we have accounted for that off the top. Based on our conversations here today, we have we have allocated $475,000 to ensure that the local certified supplement scale can include all of our certified staff. Based on this proposal of just classroom teachers, we wanted to ensure that we were the board wanted to make sure that they included that increase for all certified employees. We have pulled the skilled trades for the local salary increases. We have made an adjustment to our special population support, which is our EC services. We've seen a growing number of needs and costs for those needs for our exceptional children population, and we want to ensure that we are continuing to build that into our budget. There are additional costs for long-term subs, which brings us to the $5.6 million. Now, within this and the conversations we've had tonight, there would only be enough to do a $1,000 increase for our supplement increase for our certified staff, not a $2,000 increase that was originally proposed. And that's it.
If you can humor me for a minute and maybe go back to the first local, right here, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, help me understand here. Help me make the math. So looking at B here, staff recruitment and retention, am I understanding this correctly, that local salary increases identifies certified personnel category state supplement? The adjusted state proposal is $3,407,000.
No, there is no adjustment for that line. It remained the same.
Right, it's flat, but I mean, that's the number. That's the
Yes.
number from the state.
That's the number we have currently been receiving that
From
was
the
in our
state.
state, that was in our state budget, correct.
And the local number that you are currently receiving is $7,428,400?
No, that's the requested number to do an
Requested.
increase
Okay, for
the certified staff for $2,000.
and that would be okay, 2,000.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Shauna? Okay, so I've got a question, and maybe this is best posed to our staff. So my question is, you know, we had actually, our board had requested some additional information regarding state versus locally funded positions. And what we were looking for was more of an annual type report, not necessarily monthly. Did we ever receive anything regarding that?
Yeah, so we receive a monthly report from UCPS, and it does give you a personnel report. We don't have an annual report for that. My understanding is, and Shauna can correct me, is that those numbers fluctuate monthly, but we don't have an annual report. We only have a monthly report.
Okay. So let me ask, UCPS staff, or Drew or Shauna, is there a reason why we haven't been provided more of an annual type report that's more than just a snapshot in time?
I think to be able to provide, our staffing isn't like there's a lot of fluctuations from month to month based on funding changes. So we get over probably 65 state allotment revisions on an annual basis. So based on those state changes, it's potential that from month to month that we have to make adjustments from state funds, federal funds, local funds. We have to shift staff around. Overall, those numbers probably stay fairly consistent. We have vacancies. I think we have a more stable staffing. At this point during COVID, we had a lot of vacancies. We had a lot of trouble finding, certified staff and keeping those staff on a regular basis. But I think we have a much more stable staffing. To provide you something annually, to me, we'd be able to provide you at a point in time. The way our current system works, we pull that number that you get on a monthly basis, we pull that report at the first of each month because it does fluctuate and change all the time. It doesn't have a historical, I don't have a way with that specific report that comes from our HRMS system. It doesn't have an annualized report that you can pull. It's based on a point in time. So we make a point to pull that at the first of each month to provide it to the county.
Yeah, and I'm aware of the monthly report that we receive. But these numbers are reported up to DPI, correct?
At a point in time when they request it. So we do it annually in October, I believe, is when, or September, October timeframe, and that is always going to be at that point in time. So yes, we do it, but it changes pretty regular.
Yeah, and so we actually pulled some information from DPI. So I had staff pull this information. And I want to circle back to some information from the Finance Committee meeting the other day. So according to the report that I've got, and this is taken, I believe, from October in the school year 2025-2026, it appears as though the county funded approximately $1,284, and I understand what you're saying about snapshot in time. But I'm trying to get a measure or a bearing if this is still at least somewhat approximate or accurate. But the county funded 1,284 positions in the 25-26 school year. And it looks as though in that same time period that we had 3,477 state positions, or state-funded positions. Is that correct? 3,477 state-funded?
I mean, if that's what you've pulled from us, state report, I'll have to defer to, I don't have it in front of me, so.
And then the federally funded positions, according to this report, were 160, if I can read that right, 64. So I've got a couple of questions. And so it's got this stuff here broken down, into different categories or positions for staff. And so just a couple of observations that I've noticed here. The first one is assistant principals. And so in this report shows that in the 25-26 school year, we had we had 47 state-funded APs.
Probably at that point in time, that was probably how many we were paying from state funds.
Mm-hmm.
It is a months of employment allotment, so it can vary based on the months of employment, so yes.
Sure. And at this point in time, we had 50 locally funded APs, according to this report. Now, I heard in the Finance Committee, and I'd like just to verify this number, but I believe that the number that was thrown out was we had 41 state-funded assistant principals, and then we have a total of 104. Is that correct?
Yes, if you take the state formula and how they fund it based on our current enrollment, it would generate 41 10-month assistant principals from that allotment. So yes, there is 103 currently.
Okay. So is it safe then to say that local funds are funding, well, so if you've got 103, then you're looking at 62. So we're funding 62 out of
a large
local.
portion, yes.
Okay. So I've got a question about how these positions are allotted. Maybe this is a question more for Drew. So just looking at at, say, one high school that is currently sitting at 77% capacity. I'm not going to name the name of the high school. But looking at one high school that's sitting currently at 77% capacity, by my count, we have, with the middle school, we've got 6 assistant principals. We also have 1 principal over that middle school. Or I'm sorry, I apologize. We have 3 assistant principals, my apologies, on the middle school, and then we have 3 assistant principals at the high school, and we have principals at each. So that gives a total of 8, but you have 6 assistant principals between the middle and the high. So my question is how are these assistant principals allotted per school? Is it based off of capacity numbers? Is it based off of issues that we're seeing at the schools? How do we decide that this middle school or this high school gets 3 and that this high school gets 2?
So generally speaking, the decisions for assistant principal allotment, and Ms. McLam can correct me if I'm wrong, have been historically based on enrollment in those buildings for the large majority of our schools. We do give some schools flexibility on staffing through the use of what is called restart funds. We have several schools that take access of a state model for school improvement called Restart, where they have budget flexibility to use additional state dollars for adding additional assistant principals or deans of instruction based on the needs of that school. But generally speaking, there is a ratio we have historically used based on enrollment. We are actually looking at decreasing the number of assistant principals that we have in the near future or for next year because we're facing a decrease in state funding for that allotment formula. This is the example we have used historically to say that when you look at the way that North Carolina has funded schools through the use of an allotment formula, those allotments have not been reviewed in quite some time. We have called this to the attention of our local delegation to say we believe it's time to relook at this issue at the state level to determine how positions have been identified to be allotted so that local government is not having to assist with additional funding on that.
And listen, I'm all for that. I think that the formulation needs to be revisited, no doubt about it. I think we can all find agreement there with that.
Mr. McLean, did I say that correctly on enrollment?
That's correct.
Okay. So I've got a couple other questions about some of these other categories here. And you may have to get back to me with the information. But one of the categories listed in this DPI report was administrators. And then subcategorically, it's got managers, so official admin managers. And according to this, and again, snapshot in time here, the state funded 8 positions, local funds accounted for 33. I'm just curious, what type of positions are we talking about? This seems to be a broad category. Can you guys shed some light on that?
I believe that is a report that is generated for something we call the SS 200 or 300. That is not a report that I generate in finance. So I can't really speak to how the categories, when they get the instructions of what's included in those, but we'll be glad to be able to, to match out, try to tie out some of those numbers to provide you some of that detail.
Yeah, and there's others too. So there's clerical slash secretarial.
And I would say those are going to include our school bookkeepers, our data managers. We have school clerical guidance secretaries and others that would be included in that category.
Yeah, so the state number there, state funded number is 30, local funds are 229.
I would say yes, that's the majority, yes.
What I thought was interesting out of this report, and this is just an observation, so just an observation here, one thing that I thought was extremely interesting was TAs, teachers' assistants. Mm-hmm. So according to the DPI report, we've got 259 that are funded by state dollars, and then we've got 267 that are funded locally. So local dollars are accounting for more than half. And then there's also another category for other professionals. So other professionals, and I'd like some clarification. And again, if you guys have to get back to me, I understand. But according to this, we have 134 of those positions funded by the state dollars, and then 88 funded locally.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what that category might include, so
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from our board, from Ms. McGlam? Okay.
Chairman Helms. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to share a copy of that report with all of us? Like you were reading
Yeah,
off
sure.
of it and we don't see a soft copy or have a hard copy to reference it.
Yeah, absolutely.
share
We'll,
that
we'll get
and-
staff to do that.
We can look at the communication back and forth. That'd be great. Thanks.
I think that I'm recognizing our county manager for this one, or deputy county manager.
Let me get some clarification on that. I apologize. Where are we on this? Interlocal agreement. Thank you very much. I apologize. So we had a lot of conversation earlier about my recommendation to our board. One of those was related to the interlocal agreement. I think it's important for, number one, what we need to know from the school board, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, but what we need to know is do you want to even entertain the idea of an interlocal agreement so that those funds can be used for the purpose that our board and the agreement would be for? And so obviously, we'll have to understand, do you want to? And then after that, then we'll have to, discuss what are the terms of an actual agreement. That doesn't have to be done between now and June 30th. And I want to make that clear. We are setting aside these funds in the budget in anticipation that we can come to some resolution on that. So that gives us some time. Now, obviously, I don't want us to drag anything out. I want us to move forward so that if we are going to enter into an agreement, that we can, move quickly, get those things done. But I don't want anyone to feel like, the barn's on fire. We've got to rush in there and get it done today. We have a little bit of time. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions you might have about our philosophy or what terms may be that I think our board would like to see as far as an interlocal agreement.
Mr. Manager, if I may comment here. This item is in response to our board's perception of your prioritized goals. And that priority is, to increase the supplement for our teachers. And we intentionally wanted to include our TAs because it's our board's belief, and also my personal belief, that our TAs are incredibly special to our elementary schools, and they're the backbones of our elementary schools. I look at this interlocal agreement with very simple framework, and there's probably going to be maybe three terms that come to mind, at least for our board, and that is, number one, that these funds are to be specifically used for supplement increases for classroom teachers and TAs, and I personally realize that the TAs may require a little bit different structure because, as I understand it, their pay classification is a little bit different. And then the second term would be that these funds would be dispensed immediately or within a time frame, a reasonable time frame that both boards can agree to. Because again, going back to the TAs and how their salary or their pay structure is different. The one thing that our board does not want to see is that these funds be used for any kind of either funded or unfunded mandates or redirects. We want to be very, very specific and finite with where these funds should be appropriated to and what their uses would be. Now, another concern that I personally have with this is, as we've seen tonight, there are additional incentives coming from the state pending an approved budget. And so I do not want to see these funds go to cover the state mandates or be redirected. All right, these would be local dollars going to local teachers. And so the terms are pretty simple, and I'll leave it to the attorneys to battle that out, but that's the essential framework of this interlocal agreement.
You said you had 3. What was the third?
So the first one is, again, teachers and TAs only. The second would be that they're dispensed immediately or at a time appropriate or agreed upon by both boards. And then the third would be that they're not used to cover the mandated increases from the state. They're not to take the place of that.
I'm sure the board members and Dr. Houlihan and the team can speak their own perspective, but from my perspective, that is, why would there need to be an agreement for that? You are the ones that we've submitted our budget to the manager. The manager presented his budget on Monday. You all will vote and it will become your budget. You will then allocate to us what you desire us to have, right? So when you do that and you share with us, when you do that, here's what we want here, here, or here, we then know how to respond and do that. No agreement is necessary for that. The question from us is, we presented a budget for certified staff. You all have determined that you desire to only provide funding for teachers and TAs. Our teachers and TAs are awesome, but when you do that, you're cutting out the other certified staff. Not saying TAs are part of the certified staff. You're cutting those folks out, right? And so if that's something that you desire to do, we have no control over that. That's something that you can just do. You can just approve the budget in that way, and then we have your budget that you give us, what you approve, and we get to work.
Man,
Mr. Manager.
can I speak to that?
Yes, sir.
So I certainly understand that that would be preferable by the school board. However, I would say that our board thought that teachers were getting the stipend last year and certified staff got the stipend last year, which is not what they intended. Our board intended for teachers to be the only ones who received that stipend. Now, I understand there's miscommunication, I get it, but that's what they intended. They intended that teachers receive that stipend and not all staff. Not saying that all certified staff are not important, but when you have a budget, sometimes you have to make priorities, and sometimes you have to focus those priorities where you have funds. That's what this board did last year. They feel like that was not accomplished, which is the reason they'd like to see an agreement that we don't have that same problem, that we say this is what we like, and this is what actually is accomplished. Now, board members can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the interpretation I got.
I think that's the correct interpretation. Again, it goes back to priorities. And the message that was received by our board was loud and clear, that the priority was to attract and retain good educators. Not to say that these other positions are not important, they are. But in a year where we have so many challenges when it comes to funding, then we have to prioritize where the greatest need is. And our interpretation was teachers and TAs, making that more attractive and retaining our good educators.
Did anybody else?
Just a question, when you referred to the funding, it was immediate. We don't get the funding all at one time, though, correct? We get either one, we don't get all the funding at one time.
You're correct. And when we meet immediate, obviously, the chairman said at an agreed upon time.
Okay.
So obviously,
Make sure we're clear, we're not talking about a bonus one time.
Certainly.
Throughout the year.
We would understand that, there's got to be an agreed upon time as when that it would be paid and how much that would need to be made. So if we're making those payments, say in August, and that needs to be whatever that number is, then we would have to agree, we're giving you those funds ahead of time, so you have them to make those payments at that time.
Okay.
And obviously, our boards can work that out, staff can work that out as far as a reasonable time frame, because we understand that the TAs are not necessarily set up the same way, and that there's going to be some challenges there to deliver, an additional incentive for those folks. And so I think that, the best thing that we can do is probably keep talking about this to determine how long it's going to take staff to implement, those types of increases. But I think that, that there's room there for us to agree on a reasonable time frame.
Again, when you approve your budget, if you only approve to us fundings for a said category, in this case, you only want to fund teachers and TAs, we have no control over that. If that's all you fund, then that's all you fund. That's all what we would have to work with. And if that's the category, we're not going, it didn't happen last year as far as, because it's being portrayed that you approve the budget for one thing and we use the funds for another. That's what you're portraying. And that's an untruth to the highest degree. Ms. McLam, can you share with them the funding that they gave and how it was dispensed as it relates to last year's supplement? And Dr. Houlihan, feel free to chime in if you desire.
The supplement increase was applied to our supplement schedule that we have historically used for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been with the district too. They're all on the same supplement schedule. All of our certified staff are paid on the same salary schedules from the state as well. So when we talk in terms of classroom teacher, or we say teachers, they're all paid the same on the state salary schedules, and those certified supplements that are paid locally have always included all those categories at the same time. So we apply it to the supplement scale that we currently have. It increases as needed based on the flat dollar amount, and so everyone receives that same increase.
Ms. McLam, but that is to certified staff to many different categories of personnel, correct?
Right, so that's going to include your classroom teachers, it will include your nurses, it'll include your instructional coaches, it'll include your guidance counselors, your media coordinators. All of those individuals are all paid on those same salary schedules by the state. Yes.
But their salary is completely different. A nurse's salary is different than a teacher's salary and a psychologist's salary, correct?
They are all paid. If you compare them, they may have separate salary schedules in the state salary manual, but if you compare them, they're all paid the same dollar amounts. Some of them are differentiated based on maybe some of their degrees, and there are opportunities for them based on if they have national boards or if they have certain, there's variations to it, but yes.
Commissioner Merrill.
I think part of our confusion, and I'm going to share with you what we received and heard from you at our joint meeting last April. And last April, it was brought to us that we had dropped to like number 36 in the state for the local teacher supplement. And it was stated in that joint meeting that that was your number one priority, was to do an increase to the local teacher supplement. I remember when I was on the board, we were in the top 10. And then, of course, we had COVID and the state restructured the formula to help some of the other counties that could not do as much. So the state was going to give them more towards their local supplement. But in your comments and in what you handed us at last year's joint meeting was that you wanted to do a local increase for the classroom teachers, TAs, and you also had a priority for transportation and facilities. So that's April. Fast forward to, May, June, July, August, September, October. And Chairman Benchin came and spoke to us before we voted on our budget at the June meeting, and Commissioner Christina Helms and I questioned Chairman Benchin that we wanted to ensure that this, if you decided to do 2,000 or the 1,000, that it would go to the classroom teachers that have a roster, assign grades to report cards. And you said, yes, Team UCPS. So we left the June meeting and the June budget thinking, okay, well, if they do the 1,000, our teacher supplement could potentially move us to number 17 or 18 in the state for the local teacher supplement. If they decide to do the $2,000 supplement, that might put us around number 10 or number 11 in the state. And so a $1,000 increase, and while we're focusing so much on, how many teachers are in UCPS, and for the record, there's in this one snapshot in time, there's 4,925 employees. But we knew for classroom teachers that a $1,000 increase would be around $2.5 million, maybe around 2.6. We knew if you did a $2,000 increase, that would be around $4 or $5 million. And since your tax rate would yield an additional $8.8 million, we felt like y'all could, do either one and still have money left over. So after you stood before us and we clearly asked, is this going to classroom teachers? We had a really good feeling. And so, we roll into the new budget, July 1, July goes by, we're thinking the teachers had gotten an increase. August, September, October hits, and all of a sudden teachers start reaching out to us and letting us know that, where's our increase? We haven't gotten anything. And so that was just a shock to us because we were with the understanding after the June meeting that they were going to be getting $1,000 or $2,000. And so that's why we're here where we are tonight, is when we do send over the money thinking that the teachers are going to get a local supplement increase, but we don't find out until like 4 months later that they haven't, that was a shock to us. And so that's why we want to prioritize our teachers and our TAs, which is what we heard from the Board of Education last April, that was the number one priority, because we had dropped so low in the state. And I told everyone here, I said, when I started on the school board, we were in the top 10. I cannot believe we dropped so low. And so we unanimously agreed that we needed to take care of our teachers with local dollars. And so what was communicated to us on October 1st or 2nd was that the teachers had been told that this board did not vote for or approve a local teacher supplement. And so, you know, this board was kind of shocked because first off, we can't vote on that by state law. We can't even vote on that because we can't dictate to another elected board what they do with the money after we give them the money. So what we found out was once we send the money over on July 1, your elected board can hold on to that money and wait for a state budget to pass or not pass. But our position today is we don't feel comfortable sending the money anymore because we don't have confidence that the state is going to pass a budget. But we are confident that we can send you money for a local supplement because it's local dollars. And so that's what brings us here tonight is everything that was communicated last April at our joint meeting and discovering that our teachers had dropped so low in the state, and knowing that they're state funded, they're state employees, so the only thing we are responsible for is how much we do or do not give for a local supplement. So this board was committed 100% last year and this year to ensure that when we vote on our budget this year, we know how much money is going to go to the teachers. So by the time you voted on this in October, the priority had changed from teacher supplement, TAs, transportation and facilities, to a completely new category that had not been given to us before. It was shown that it was going to go to, that the teacher supplement that we had allotted was also going to go to school nurses, school counselors, media coordinators, psychologists, social workers, curriculum, and EC specialized services. Now, all of those positions are important, but you didn't come to us about those positions. You came to us about classroom teachers and where our classroom teachers compared to the rest of the state, and we agreed with you that it was too low. And we wanted to bring our classroom teachers up on their local supplement as high as we could get for $1,000 or a $2,000 increase. But at no time in April, May, June, July, August, September, or October did you ever come to us and say, well, we want increases, a supplement increase. We want the teacher supplement increase to go to nurses, counselors, media, psychologists, social workers, curriculum, and EC. So that's why we're setting aside a contingency fund this year, because we want to make sure that we are not at number 42 or number 36 or 37 for our local teacher supplement.
I wish that last year we'd have had that conversation, because historically, when we reference it's certified staff, but it's usually a lot of times it will say teacher supplement, but that teacher supplement has historically been certified staff. And so since verbiage and words was a problem, I instructed Dr. Houlihan and the finance team, and that's why tonight when you hear us speak, we speak certified staff. When we stood before the Board of County Commissioners and we talked about teacher supplements, you know, that's conclusive of certified staff. And in your thinking that it was only teachers, for that, I apologize. I'll say that today. And I could have apologized last year had that conversation occurred, because that is what historically, when Ms. McLam and the finance team and they produce their budget and we look for teachers, certified staff, and we have 2 board members that are sitting on the county commission right now, which that's been the process since they was on. That's why I had this document created. Am I losing juice? Well, you're the only one. Can y'all hear me? All right. That's why I asked Mr. McLam to go back to categorize the local supplement, which has always been teachers and certified staff, right? Sometimes folks will speak in the language of teacher supplement, but that's almost like you have a full name for a building, but then you call it the Ag Center, right? The full name is the Union County Agricultural Center, but we just say Ag Center. And that's exactly what happens when we talk about teacher and certified supplement. We say teacher supplement, but it is inclusive of all those items. And there was no holding of funds and then changing the categories by which you properly allocated those funds, right? We historically have been guided by our dispensement of those funds predicated on the state. And so if today what you have a fear of, and it's okay to have that fear if you feel you need to have it, then, and if you only want to allocate funds for one segment of the certified staff, that's your purview. And in certifying those funds, you know, we will dispense them in the said way. But it's not as if we can't be trusted. I think that last September and October was a debacle of false information, misinformation to the highest degree. And if we're going to have a way forward, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to have a good relationship forward, you don't start that relationship by saying to a other, you have to sign this or we're not going to give that. That's not proper.
Yeah.
Reverend Benji.
Oh.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm just, as far as the language has not changed from year to year.
No.
It's always been certified staff. And as you mentioned, there are those who are on the county commission, who are currently county commissioners, who are aware of what the language entails. It's not as if there's some code in 2025 or 2026. Okay. Also, something was mentioned in reference to last year about the $2,000 and the $1,000 supplement. And I believe you also mentioned about the budget from the state. I think it's very, information that we all know but needs to be expressed tonight, is that it was not, as you mentioned, not reiterating, but just kind of bringing some more light to it, that we did not have a budget from the state. And even though there is something that has been created, it has not been approved as of yet, correct? For this current year. Okay, so the misinformation, and I feel trying to discredit UCPS, I think that's not fair. And I agree 100% with you, Reverend Benson, that if we're looking to establish a partnership, especially down through the years, even since I've been on here and I've worked alongside with some individuals, we have tried our best to do the right thing and what have you. But to me, this doesn't feel nor sound like a trying to create a moving forward partnership. It sounds to be more like a dictatorship. And it's not good when you feel like you're at the mercy of a dictator. So I feel that we can definitely create this culture that has been established within the last few months, which is very unhealthy. And I know none of us sitting around here want to have an unhealthy relationship with those who are supposed to be our partners. So thank you for bringing that up and just making sure that everyone knows that we did not just hold money, but it's very hard, even as a pastor, I know that if you don't have a budget, it's kind of hard to determine what you're able to do. So yeah, I hope that we can really come to and my question, those were statements, but my question is, if we do not choose to accommodate to you all's request, pretty much that means that you all will not provide us the funds, correct? County manager.
That is the recommendation from the county manager. Obviously, the board has to make their own decision, but
Okay.
that is my recommendation. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I just want to echo off of what Chairman Bench and Reverend Kirkpatrick said. You know, obviously we all know there's been tension. We get it. We know it's there. It's not a surprise. But like what they said, we need to move past this. And if y'all kept talking about transparency, but the nitpicking, and we all know, especially when Commissioner Sides was here, he was gung-ho before he left the board, and he was gung-ho wanting to make sure we were pushing for the certified staff supplement. We have members on there that have sat on this board as well. No. So the fact that we're nitpicking at the verbiage, because y'all know exactly how we've done this for years. Shauna's been on here for years, and she clarified that, okay? We have to wait for the state budget. We didn't have it. We weren't holding funds. We weren't doing anything to just not give that's what we're fighting for. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here, you know. But if we want to start fresh, like he said, I mean, maybe not as far as the dictatorship, but it does feel a little like, you know, we're being discredited and we're being accused of hiding things and hiding money and no. That's not the case. We have always fought for our teachers. We're always trying, and once again, let's not nitpick with the verbiage. Certified staff is exactly that, what we've clarified. Teachers, TAs, nurses. You start taking away that and you don't provide for those, you're going to hear a lot from the public because, you know, and even when you talked about our SROs earlier, you made it almost discredited how important it was to the public, how important it is for our safety in our schools. So remember again, the top reason why people come to Union County is our schools and the fact that we do outperform. That's just my take on it, but again, if we want to start fresh and we want to go move on, then let's be transparent all around. But please let's not nitpick on the words and the verbiage and stuff like that. We want to provide for our teachers, we want to provide for the staff that is needed. Thank you.
So I'll respond with this, that if anything, we're avoiding nitpicking and semantics. We're making it very clear as to, you know, what the terms are and what we'd like to accomplish with this. Sorry about that. Everybody hear me now? Okay. So what I'm saying is that if anything, we are not playing semantics. We are trying to be transparent, and we're laying out very simple terms. So one thing that, you know, that's not really been talked about, that's partially driving this whole thing is, you know, if you look currently, we're 6th in local funding. 6th in the state out of 115 school districts. Number 6 in local funding. You compare that to state funding, we're sitting at 113. You compare that to federal funding, we're sitting at 115. But where do we sit currently on teacher pay? What's the number? 37. So we're 6th in local funding, but we're 37 in teacher pay. Listen, nobody here is saying that there shouldn't be trust between our two boards. All right, that's not what we're saying at all. What we are saying is that there's an expectation. We have to do better, all right? And when you're sitting at 6 in local funding and 37th in teacher pay, then something has to change. Okay, we have to start making improvements. And so how do you do that? Well, you do a pointed solution with expected results. And you know what? We can't provide a $2,000 or $3,000 supplement and bite that off all in one chunk. But this is something that we can do, specifically intended for the biggest pain point that our district has. At least that's what we've heard. And so we're offering a solution. We're offering a solution because we agree with you that our teachers are important and they should be prioritized. This is not a point of contention. This is a point of agreement. Yes, there are conditions. Yes, we want to see this go to teachers and TAs. Yes, we want it turned around quickly. And yes, we don't want it to take the place of some sort of state mandated increase. We want this to be an addition to. Union County leads the way.
I have a
Well,
question.
Mr. Chairman, if that is indeed what you desire, and then when in your budget, if you fund it that way, then we will operate that way. There's no need for an agreement to do that. If you fund it that way, if that's what you approve, and that's what you send to us, then that's what we will work with. There is no in the agreement. All you need to do is approve your budget, and it comes back to us. We see what you've approved, and we operate. We go to work.
So I do need to make it clear that we have no statutory authority to tell you under our budget that you have to spend that on teacher supplements. We give it to you by function and not by line item, and so you can spend it pretty much on whatever you want to, which is why this board has a concern about where those funds go.
No, we understand that, Mr. Manager. We understand that purpose and function. We get that. We clearly understand that. But if you're sitting here today saying that when you fund us, what we ask for, and if that's what you're indicating, we're not going to create a war with our Board of County Commissioners. If you desire, we know that when you send us the funds, we know that it's for us to have purpose and function. But if you're indicating or allocating an approval of that, and that's what you desire, then that's what we have to work with. We're not looking for a war. We're looking for a relationship.
I have one question. It's mainly probably geared more towards our staff and to help me understand and everybody understand. That 37th ranking that we keep talking about for teachers, what does that include? Is that just teachers or is it certified staff?
That would be teacher. The way the information is gathered, that is our teacher ranking. But again, when you put them all together, it wouldn't vary very much because they're all on the same scales.
That ranking is just teachers, that's what clarification.
So it was the local supplement. What was provided to us last year was where we ranked in the state just for the local supplement.
That's correct.
And it showed the year prior and then that year. So I just want to be clear, it wasn't teacher pay total. It was the local Union County tax dollar supplement for teachers.
Now that number does, and the reason it started skewing, it does include the state-funded supplement across the state. So that's how those rankings have started skewing and brought us down in our ranking, because there are many districts based on their poverty and funding that they get $5,000 per certified staff to issue from the state.
So, for instance, if they're a tier 1 county, they get $5,000 they can use for how they see fit.
I believe that's the maximum amount. I don't know that they've
Not
increased
everybody
that,
gets
but yeah,
but-
5,000. They would
And
get
that's
5,000.
included in that report as a local supplement?
My understanding is that should be included in that report as well. Yes.
Okay.
And during COVID is when UCPS started dropping because we were not getting that additional funding.
And to be clear on that, as was reflected in the the state budget presentation, local budget presentation, one of those line items that you saw was a decrease in funding of $3.7 million. Right? That is the state supplement that we have been eligible for the past four or 5 years. That is based on the total valuation of property in your county. And Union County has now exceeded that threshold as dictated by state law. So a signature aspect of our local budget request is simply, without something happening, either we get the funding locally, we redirect the funds, or the General Assembly takes action, we will be essentially losing $3.7 million. What that means for the supplement from the state is that our certified staff would be losing $900 per year in their compensation. And we cannot afford that to happen. I think all of us would agree that none of us would advocate for a reduction of funding. All of those numbers, that 3.7 is part of our ranking of the number 37. If that were to go away, our ranking would plummet, right? So all of these, whether it's state or local, and the state actually dictates who gets those dollars. It's classroom teachers, it's nurses, it's psychologists, it's all of those that are being paid on the state certified scale.
And Dr. Julian, I think that, it should be said that with the revaluation, I want to clear the air about that, because number one, the reval was something that was dictated by state law. Okay, so this board had no control over the triggers. So it's triggered at 115% of market value, and then likewise, if it drops down to 85%, it's triggered. So the only thing that this board can control is the tax rate. So I want to go ahead and set that record straight now. I hear you. I understand, that we're looking at a shortfall, and that plays a part in it. My question is has there been any discussion with our state delegates about potentially moving that mark? And is that something, because look, I'll be glad to help you and help support UCPS with that. All right? I think that there is changes that need to be made at state level, including the state formula and obviously this right here too. Has there been any discussion there, any update?
I have personally had discussion with at least one member of our delegation on asking that both the House and Senate look at that. I believe the last time the dollar threshold was looked at, I want to reference maybe 2021 or 2023. It's been a few years since the state evaluated what that dollar amount is for qualifications. I have no idea if in the budget or a separate bill if that's going to be addressed, but that is something I think that we could all advocate for here locally, is for that adjustment to be made so that we do not lose $3.7 million of state funds.
Okay, well, listen, the Chairman Benchin and I have agreed that for the benefit of relationships, that we should call for a short 10-minute recess. So we're going to call a 10-minute break, and we will resume at approximately 8:50. All right, well, I will call this meeting back to order. Thank you, Chairman Benson. I appreciate you helping me out with that.
Détente is a wonderful thing.
So listen, I'll say this. We've had a lot of discussion on this interlocal agreement. And, you know, to Chairman Benson's point about relationships, I think the relationships are important. I think that the relationship between these two boards is extremely important to Union County as a whole. And when these two boards are at odds, then it doesn't benefit anyone. My suggestion is that, relationships sometimes have to start out small and they have to build back. My suggestion is that Chairman Benson, you and your board discuss this, amongst yourselves, however, your board policies and your procedures see fit. And then, at a given time, you guys provide us with, the answer of your board to the interlocal agreement. Unless there's additional comments to be made.
Chairman Helms.
Anyone?
There. Is there any room for negotiation on that interlocal agreement? Or is it just set in stone and?
Mr. Tucker, I would say that the terms that we've outlined are fairly simple. If there is discussion that comes from the Board of Education that you feel as though needs to be sent to our board, then you can certainly do that. But I think that our terms are pretty solid. I think that our board is fairly unified in those terms.
And can I add something? Chairman Helms?
Vice Chair Helms.
Thank you. What we're recommending is, just for clarification, the certified staff up to this point will continue to get what they've been allotted for previous years. We're asking this year that the teachers and TAs are the ones who get the additional funds this year. They will still continue to get what they've gotten previously, but this year it'll be just an increase just to the teachers and teacher assistants. That is what we are proposing, just for clarification.
And thank you, Madam Vice Chair. If that is in fact the case, again, that just speaks to, we don't need an agreement for that. Y'all just need to approve that. And Mr. Tucker, at this point, we're not, or let me say, as a board, we don't want to enter into a situation or even debate a situation where we're being not adhering to our responsibilities. We're not looking for a negotiation. We're simply saying there is not a necessity for an item like that. We don't need that. Okay, and if the county commission, because what I hear you saying, and again, I apologize for verbiage. If that's the only way you looked at it, clearly everybody knows now when we talk about local supplements, that's certified staff. I think everybody knows that now, and I want to be a friend of our Board of County Commissioners. We have had a meeting between you and myself, a good meeting at the Skinny Cook. We then invited the vice chairman in. We had another good meeting. We're making the Skinny Cook rich, and we talked about a couple of things out of there, and that would be good communication was number one, right? Good communication, and I believe that if you all feel, again, if that's how you feel, I learned a long time ago, when somebody feels a certain way, you don't try to tell them they're not feeling what they feel. If that's how you feel, I'm simply saying that you don't need to feel that. You don't need to feel that if you desire something of us, you can't trust us to come through with you. You can't, we're going to work together. You and I, we're going to work together. We're going to do this together. And we don't need a paper to say how we do it together. We just simply do it together.
I have a couple questions on this thing, well, I don't know what you call it, this agreement. So essentially, I'm not saying, I'm just asking. It's almost like, to me, it seems kind of like a contract. So is this only for this budget year? Is this something that is going to proceed into the following budget years? I mean, those are my first questions. Is that what it's just for this year?
Excellent question, and it would not be the intention that we have a permanent agreement that lasts forever. I think this is for this budget year at this point in time.
And I would agree. The conversations that we have had, you know, that's the intent, is that it is for this fiscal year. I think every year is unique, and so we're starting with this year, and again, you know, Chairman mentioned, you're right. All right, we will do this thing together. The will of our board is to explore this with this interlocal agreement. So, but you know what? It starts here. It starts with these conversations. It starts with Skinny Cook, and it starts with communication.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to clarify how that state formula would be impacted by this, so everyone understands. That amount that we're statutorily required to give you, which is $5.6 million this year, that's the statutory amount. It is calculated based on the amount that we give you in the current fiscal year. If the boards come together, however, whether it's an agreement or not agreement or whatever, and those funds are allocated to your budget, that now becomes the new floor. That additional $3.8 million becomes part of your budget. It becomes part of the new calculation. And in years future, your allocation actually grows because of that. It's not a matter of it's on our side of the budget. It actually becomes on your side of the budget, and it benefits you because of that. So I did want to make that clear. That becomes the new floor, and every year we have to base that calculation on the floor.
So I'm assuming that holds true for the sheriff money as well?
Say that again?
Assuming that holds true for the sheriff.
So sheriff's money is outside of that. So this would be only the dollars specific for the actual teacher supplements. Sheriff's money would be outside of that.
So that does not include, as we've discussed, certified staff.
That is correct. That does not include certified staff.
So, just assuming, because I think someone asked this earlier and I don't think I understood the response. If we don't agree to this, because, you know, at least how I see it, it almost, personally, it seems like there's just, we want to work together. That's the biggest thing we've strived on, and as elected officials, that's always been something that we prided ourselves on, that our boards work together. Well, obviously, there's a strain right now. We want to move past that.
Sure.
But I feel, I can't speak for the rest of the board, I feel that it seems almost like a big distrust, like you guys just don't trust us to do this, to where do we allocate the funds, et cetera. Which,
certainly.
And you're saying yes, okay. So my question is, if we don't agree to this agreement,
Sir.
you're not giving us, you're not going to, am I asking,
Yeah, so.
You're not going to give it to us?
Listen, the
Essentially,
board
okay.
makes the final decision. It is my recommendation that if there is not an agreement, then those funds would not be allocated to UCPS. They can do whatever they want to. This is just a budget recommendation. If the board decides they want to do something different, they can, and that's what we'll do. This is my recommendation at this point in time.
So I think that I think maybe I'm a little bit confused. I don't know if anyone else is. You just said Okay, so is that, am I not understanding that right? The state says we have to get that, or we don't, or they don't? Someone explain that part to me, because I think I'm misunderstanding.
What I indicated earlier is if we come to an agreement, whether it's a written agreement or whether the board decides to give you those funds for teacher supplement, however that comes about, that does increase your budget. That does increase that yearly not yearly amount that's calculated from the state. If the board does not give you those funds, then your amount does not go up by that amount. And so the board has to decide, do they want to draw a line in the sand and say, you must agree to this agreement before we'll give you those funds? That's up to them to make that decision. That's their decision. But if they do that and you don't agree, then those funds would not go to you, therefore your base would not increase.
I think I need this. So essentially then, we don't have the teacher or essentially we wouldn't have a certified staff supplement at all. And then we wouldn't even have as you are calling it, a teacher/TA supplement. Is that correct? Okay, I want to make sure I want to make sure I'm clarifying and we all agree. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure we understood that. Thank you.
I do want to clarify though, we don't make decisions on whether you give certified staff money out of the dollars that we do give you. That's your choice. It's your budget. That $5.6 million, if you choose to give that as certified staff increases, we're not standing in the way of that. That's your decision. What we're debating right now is $3.8 million for teacher supplements. So you can use those funds for certified staff if you choose. Now that may mean some other priority does not get funded because of that. But I don't want anyone to think you can't give certified staff increases. You can with those dollars, not with the $3.8 million.
And County Manager, you bring up a very good point. So what you're referring to there is statutory versus discretionary funds.
That's correct.
So obviously the state requires us to provide statutory funds, and to your point, whatever the previous year's total amount was, right? Then that becomes the new floor according to the state formula, and that's how those statutory funds are calculated. That's my understanding.
Yes, sir.
And so your board, the Board of Education, has full autonomy over those statutory funds.
Yes.
What we are proposing is an agreement on a portion of the discretionary funds.
Yes, sir.
I would say similarly to Mr. Matthews' comments, if our board decided that let me back up. If the funding was allocated for the teachers and the TAs, and our board wanted to use additional funding on our end to pay additional certified staff, they have that right to do that as well. We understand that your intent is classroom teachers and TAs. If this board wants to say, we also want to increase pay on the supplement schedule for other certified staff, they have the right and ability to do that as well. The second point of clarification I'd like to make to Mr. Matthews' comments is in the anticipation that there is no agreement and those funds are not allocated. The statutory obligation number that was mentioned was 5.6. As we've shown on the slide prior, our projected mandated costs are 3.3. So that net difference gives our board a very small margin of what we can do with those funds that would not cover any increase to the teacher supplement. So all of those funds have to come off the top because we have mandated costs, charter school payments, utility increases, etc. So that's what we're working with here. I think that obviously I have no problem being on record tonight to say I hear what the wishes are of the Board of County Commissioners. I understand the points you're making. And I have no problem assuring you that if the funding was allocated without an interlocal agreement, I can guarantee you that our teachers and TAs will get exactly what the model has drawn up to be based on what that agreement is. And if that doesn't happen, then our board can hold me accountable for it. But that would, I understand your intent, and we will make that happen.
And that's how friends roll. That's how we roll.
Is there any additional comments regarding this item?
Yeah, I just think it's very important to end on this note. The state formula requires us to give an additional $5.6 million. The interlocal agreement is an additional 3.8, almost 3.9 million. And then if you add in the SROs, what we are committing tonight is to, if everybody agrees on the interlocal agreement and everything, UCPS would not getting the state mandate of 5.6, we are offering you $12.2 million. So I just want it to be very clear, the state is offering the formula says an additional 5.6. Through the county manager's recommendation, we are considering giving $12.2 million, not the minimum.
Okay, can I say something on top of that?
Yeah.
Yes, we would be getting $12.2 million, but that 2774 for the SROs is going to come off of that. And then the interlocal agreement would come off of that. And then we'd basically have 5608,722 to use on our mandated expenses. And I mean, our mandated expenses are 3369,616. So I understand that, yes, we are getting the 12 million, but what's actual usable and not already, like mandated expenses are teachers' pay, because we don't get funded enough from the state for teacher positions. So if we have a teacher position that we need, because let's see they do a K-3 unfunded Band-Aid for classroom size, then that teacher pay, they're not going to get it if we don't have these mandated expenses set aside. So I appreciate that. And I hate that we're even in this position, because last year we were friends. I mean, we did things together socially. We could have just talked. We didn't realize that there was a misunderstanding. We didn't know anything about a misunderstanding. And so it's just disappointing that that's what we're having to deal with now, with something that I don't know if we've ever had an interlocal agreement. Has any school system in North Carolina ever had to do an interlocal agreement? Because maybe if we had more information on that.
And you know, let's remind, what year was it? We have the chart, I know Shantna sent something, or we have something on it. What year was it? There was a couple years where, maybe it wasn't this past year, it was the year before,
No,
if I'm not
years-
correct,
the years
where we
you-
didn't even get anything from the county. We didn't, or you know what I'm saying? You follow me, you have it.
Yeah.
But where we made cuts within UCPS to fund the supplement for the teachers. So, you know, and that was for a few years. I mean, I guess, Jimmy, I think you have that, or you have some more information on
2017 to
that.
2018, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 2021, there was no local certified supplement increase.
But that doesn't mean the county didn't give you additional funds. That means that you did not direct those to supplements. The county did give you additional funds during those timeframes. You just may not have used them for supplements. I find it hard to believe that your budget didn't go up from the county during those timeframes. Now, I don't have the history. I can't refer to it, but I find it hard to believe that our allocation to you did not go up during those timeframes.
According to our research right here, over those years, as far as local supplement.
I'm not talking about supplements. I'm talking about how much money we gave to the school board. I'm pretty sure that amount went up.
You may be talking about statutory, but we're just talking about the local supplement that we're in discussion with
Certainly.
tonight. And that's a specific thing, right?
I would just say, Mr. Matthews, again, I'll go back to my last statement. Each year of those years, yes, the county allocated funding to UCPS. The question would be, based on the mandated expenses of that year, how much was remaining in the net balance and how much of that could be utilized for supplement increases?
Absolutely.
In those 4 years, the answer may have been there wasn't enough funding left over for supplement increases. I don't know, and I have to go back and look at all of those budgets from those years, but that's what happens. Of course, the county allocated funds. Did the school system have the ability to approve increases based on the funding that was available? That's the question, I think.
And I completely agree with that. I just didn't want there to be a misunderstanding that we gave you zero. That is not accurate.
No,
we
that's
gave
why-
you more money.
That's
It
why
just
I
may not have been
specifically said
enough to actually
supplement.
fund
Understood,
supplement.
and
That's why I said
yeah,
supplement.
That's what I was saying.
Supplement.
I'm talking about, and I'm
The
sorry.
county,
again, verbiage.
the county did not fund UCPS in 2017 to 2018, all the way to 2021. We're
additional
talking
supplement.
Supplement.
Got it.
And I don't blame you for saying that. And I apologize. Maybe I should have just made it even clearer, because I know there are people going to sit around here, and that's why we need to stop the nonsense, because there's too many people hearing what we say and running with it and causing a mess. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I do apologize. That's why I said, someone please confirm my, I just, and we understand the same as you, like any business, we have to, like a business, yes, we have to, but like they said, yes, we have supplements, we know where we want to allocate the funds, we know we have to do that, but, we can't we have, like you said, mandatory expenses that have to come off the top. So then, that's why, we have to look at the balance and what's left over. And that's our biggest thing with that. So I just want to make sure, we're understanding that, yes, when I said that with my verbiage there with the local, okay, yeah. So that's my apology.
Madam Vice Chair, did you have something?
No, it was said.
Okay. All right, well, Chairman Benson, if you're okay with it, I think we'll move on to the next item. And
That'd be great, Mr. Chairman.
okay, so our next item is capital planning, and I think that I'm turning this over to Superintendent Houlihan.
Thank you, Chairman Helms. So tonight, we do not have a PowerPoint presentation on this tonight. What you have in front of you is a copy of the current UCPS long-term capital plan. All of these projects were developed some time ago and recently approved by our Board of Education back in the spring. The items that are marked at the very top of that would be the projects that were recommended in our bond request to the Board of County Commissioners. I think the discussion tonight is really the beginning of what would probably be a longer series of discussions that as a board and staff, we're looking to the county, both county staff and Board of County Commissioners, to give us feedback on guidance on how to proceed. I'm going to let Mr. Moore kind of go through the overall at a glance in terms of what the 10-year plan looks like. But really the conversation I think that we need to get to is based on the concerns around debt funding and bond amounts, what guidance or feedback could we get or begin to get on how to proceed in terms of future bond projects and or items that might be recommended to come off of a bond request and into a CIP. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Moore. He's going to speak very briefly at a high level, and then we'll entertain any discussion.
Yeah, we'll put the emphasis on briefly. So what you have in front of you is a long-range plan that our Board of Education adopted in March, and that I think you saw at your April meeting. We have not made modifications to this since the bond referendum was deferred. So as Dr. Houlihan said, I think our ask tonight is first off, if you have any questions, this is a document that's kind of that was developed 2020, 2021, when we were looking to do the bond requests every 2 years. So what I think we would like to do is, as Dr. Houlihan said, looking for ways of how we fund this moving forward. Do we still want to look at this 2-year model? Do we look at something else? But I would like, for the sake of time, possibly if we could think about having maybe a couple of Board of County Commissioners meeting, a couple of Board of County Commissioners members and a couple members of our Facilities Committee work with county staff and UCPS staff to kind of formulate a plan of how we move forward with this.
I actually think that's a great idea, and Dr. Houlihan and I have discussed this. We're not going to be able to solve this board to board. It's too much. It's too difficult to get all the board members together, make this kind of effort, because it's not something you do in a meeting or two. This is going to take a little bit of time. So I think it's an excellent idea. And I think it also goes back to building that relationship back to where we take a couple of board members from each board, have them meet, talk about the needs of the school long-term. What can we afford? How can that build into our debt model? Look at that over time, and then come with a unified plan of this is what the schools and what the county commissioners can agree to for long-range capital construction. And in that way, every 2 years, every 4, whatever the time frame is, we're not really debating about whether this is an approved capital plan. You have something that both boards can agree to, you understand the purpose behind it, and we can just go from there. So we don't need to solve this tonight, but I would recommend that if the boards are both interested in that you select a couple of members from each one of that, whether it's your facilities members, whether it's whomever on our board, and then they meet with staff and we start trying to work through this capital side of it.
Madam Vice Chair.
Something that I would like to have prior to those meetings beginning is what the current core capacity is for each item, each school that is listed, what the percentage of capacity currently is filled, and what the proposed capacity will be. Thank you.
Do you want core capacity or classroom capacity, or both?
I'll take both.
And then the percentage of classroom capacity?
No, what the capacity is currently, like at Parkwood, I know Parkwood's about, 3/4 full?
But you said that you wanted the percentage, I would think it's of classroom capacity filled, not core capacity, right? Either way.
Either or will do, it's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
Mr. County Manager, so I guess the proposal here is that the Board of Education can take that to their board, identify members, vote on those members, and then staff can communicate. We'll do the same.
We'll do the same.
And then staff can communicate, and we can start arranging in-person meetings, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, and again, this is a long-term process. This doesn't have to be done overnight. So just like everything else, this may take several months for us to work through that. Doesn't have to be solved by June 30th. We can go into the fall. And I think actually Dr. Houlihan and I had talked and said after the summer is probably a better time to actually get this ramped up anyway. So again, not in a rush, but certainly want to get this done so that we have a framework that we all can agree upon.
I would support that. I would also add to that comment by saying that on the flip side, I believe we do have some urgency, just simply because we have projects that really need some attention. A lot of the projects on this capital long-term plan are due to aging facilities, and we would like to get some agreement sooner rather than later. When I say sooner, I'll say I don't think any of us want to be here a year from now still debating this, because we have to plan, you have to plan financially, et cetera. So I agree with the timeline of maybe a fall convening, but would love to, in the spring at some time, have something proposed to both boards that we can agree on, if possible.
Dr. Houlihan, question. How old is Parkwood High School? Just not a specific year, but time frame, 6 or 7.
It was constructed in the 60s.
Piedmont as well?
Piedmont's about the mid-60s as well.
The Wolf Building?
Wolf as a project is not necessarily only about age. It is about our increase in our students who qualify for services at Wolf, and we are out of space. We need to create more space for our severely disabled children.
Absolutely, okay. And South Providence, moving to Walter Bickett, know that building definitely needs some, okay.
We would like to relocate South Providence to a centralized location with some additional renovation work to accommodate students and staff. The building that's currently in Waxhaw being used for South Providence is a very old building that is extremely financially impactful in terms of utility and upkeep. And we believe that we would be able to lower fuel cost by having a more centralized location.
I do want to stress that there may be opportunities to fund projects outside of bonds and debt. So in these discussions, we may identify that there are other ways to fund projects that are smaller in size, less in cost, without having to go out for bond referendums for those. So I think that's a valuable part of this discussion.
And or if scopes need to change, right? If visions behind projects need to be adjusted based on funding available and needs, then we can certainly be open to those conversations as well.
Yeah, I think prioritization of the projects and also creativity will certainly be key with that. Okay, well, is that all that we had then for capital?
I believe that's all we have.
Capital planning? Okay. Well, this brings us to probably everybody's favorite time of the meeting, which is the adjournment and comments. And I'll defer to Chairman Benchin for your board and your comments, and then we'll proceed with ours.
Did any board member have any closing comments before I give mine? Dr. Houlihan, did you have anything that you wanted to make sure that we left with the citizenry? You good? Mr. Vice Chairman?
I just wanted to say thank you for the County Commission for meeting with us tonight. I think hopefully we got somewhere. So especially on the long-range capital plan, I look forward. Hopefully I will be a liaison for that for our board. I'm hoping anyway, and some other members, but we look forward to that.
All right. Anybody else? It's amazing. Y'all give her a hand. Mr. Chairman, before I turn it over to you, again, thank you for such great hospitality. Again, to the staff that made everything possible here today, down to the food, of which I'm taking mine home. Y'all don't let me forget my box back there. It's got my name on it. But I also want to say, Mr. Chairman, I am committed to you to be a good teammate. I'm committed to you, and I'm saying it here in public. I want our boards to be succinct. And I want to say to you that you have my word that we will be good teammates. We will do good together. No more of this nonsense. We will call, we will fight together, we will push back on the hounds at the gate, and we'll make our county great. And I appreciate you.
Thank you, Chairman Benchin. I'll start with our county manager. Brian, do you have any comments for tonight?
No, sir, I have no comments, thank you.
So we'll just go down the line. Commissioner Balcom, any comments?
I heard it said that we used to be friends. I believe we still are friends. We're just working through the business dealings at hand, and each person holds their views passionately. And as long as we don't let this thing go personal between us, we're fine. You know, it's just something that we've got to work through. I believe each person in the room prioritizes the teachers, and as we should. We do not need to be at the 37 ranking. We need to bring that up, and I know everyone agrees with that. So we will still be friends. We are friends. And just thank everybody for their civility and being a part of the meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Balcom. Commissioner Merrill.
I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I look forward to future discussions.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Commissioner Wedra.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. I respect you all. I respect what you do for our children, the hard work you put in. Put 2 children through UCPS, so I do really appreciate the school board, the staff, and the teachers and teachers' aides. I don't think we should make this so much about how we feel, but maybe how the citizens feel. And I think the citizens would like some certainty that the teachers are going to be paid and the teachers' aides are going to be paid more than what the state has given them. Thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Wedra. Vice Chair Helms.
Thank you, sir. So everybody that's at this table has a vested interest in UCPS. We've all been in the school system one way or another, and it is a feather in the cap of Union County. There's no doubt about that. Our teachers and our TAs and our staff do an amazing job. And nobody is questioning that or doubting their ability. But we have heard time and time again, teachers, teachers, teachers. That's where the interlocal agreement is coming from on our end. One thing that I would like to offer up to Union County Public Schools, and if they would put this on their next meeting as an agenda item. Union County in the last year or so has developed a strategy and innovation department. And what that basically is a Doge. We have Doged Union County within, and not in a fiscal year, but we found over $83,000 worth of funds that could have been reallocated and did get reallocated because we deemed it as, I don't want to say wasteful, but for lack of a better term, wasteful spending. I would like to offer that up to Union County Public Schools. I know our staff has reached out to UCPS and offered it, but I'm offering it to the board. We will be more than happy to have our Doge staff, our strategy and innovation staff, come over with the board approval to come and see if UCPS has any waste. I hope they don't find a penny, but it doesn't hurt to look. So I'm asking you to please put this on your agenda item for your next meeting, and y'all vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Helms. So this has been an interesting meeting, and you know, obviously, our two boards have had. Well, it's been an interesting year, I would say, and so we've faced a lot of challenges, but the start to rebuilding this relationship, I think, begins tonight, and it began tonight, and so. First of all, I want to say, again, thank you. Thank you to all UCPS staff. Thank you to all the board members for being here, to showing that commitment. I want to thank all the folks represented here tonight for the civility that we had. I think that, maybe we didn't leave out of here with a decision on an interlocal agreement. But I think where we did leave this meeting is we opened up the lines of communication between the two boards. We have we both have interest in having a partnership. All right, UCPS is a big part of Union County. No doubt about that. And we recognize that fact. I think it's already been said by many board members that, hey, listen, we've got a vested interest. I have children in UCPS. All right, I do. And I want UCPS to succeed. Chairman Benchin, I appreciate your remarks. We've been friends for a while, okay? And although we may have differences, my friendship remains for you. And that's true of any board member on this board. So I'll just say, I appreciate everything. May not seem like much, but I think a lot was accomplished here tonight, and I appreciate the coordination. Thank you to all the staff members for being here. Thank you to those that attended in person, showing your commitment to making, Union County as a whole better. So with that, that's the end of my comments. Again, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. And I will ask for a vote from our board for adjournment. So I'll make the motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye. Chairman Benchin.
Motion to adjourn? Need a second? All in favor? Aye.